So tell me where you're coming from. If you want to drop an hola, that's great. But I want to know, people in the house, if you are sober already or not yet. Sober, yeah. 14 years. Judith. Woo! Okay. Woo! Despacito. All right. Sober 5 weeks. Yes, Melissa. Awesome. Very cool. Ignite the Latina in me. Ooh, that one was a good one. Make me a little out of my comfort zone. Make you a little out of your comfort zone. Because that is life. We have to get uncomfortable in life. And being sober, sometimes it's really, really uncomfortable. And also really, really beautiful. And today, yeah, too much partying last night, Dana. All right, I get you, girl. Sober curious. Yeah, awesome. Welcome. I honor your time. God, I'm so grateful to be here on this Saturday with all of you. My name is Pamela. I am a woman in the journey of recovery from all the things. Trauma, codependency, love addiction, sex addiction. It's awesome to say that. It's true. Alcoholism is my big one. But codependency was right underneath all of it. And so in order to truly heal, I had to get really honest and look at all that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Hi, Lucy. Woo! Bea, not yet. Awesome. Rebecca, cannabis and food addiction. Will this work for you? Yes, babe, because we are talking about taking ownership of your life regardless of what your thing is. So absolutely. Welcome. Definitely. And so here's how this is going to go. This is my second live, so it's very exciting. I have been a teacher and insight timer since 2018, 19. I am a coach. I'm the founder of My Badass Recovery. I love working with people one-on-one, of course. I'm, so grateful and honored to have this be in your ears and in your hearts. So more of this. We're going to share space for about an hour. The way that this is going to go, Dana, hi, welcome, is I'm going to share a little bit about my story because obviously as a coach, I use a methodology and a framework that I developed, but mostly what makes me different from the therapists and other people that want to help in the journey out of a pattern of addiction is that I've been there. And this is my superpower. And as you will hear later on, this is also your superpower. That's the beauty of it. It takes one to know one. And when we can connect fully with our hearts, we actually understand addiction better because the people that are out there, and I love therapists and I'm all for therapists. I love them. They have a place in this journey that is so precious. But when it comes to understanding our addiction, we cannot operate from our mind and a framework of rationality because addiction is not rational. So anyway, we'll do a little bit of that. At the end, I will have time for Q&A. So thank you for the comments of the courses. Thank you. For those of you who know my story, I will be brief, but for those of you who don't, it is important that you know that today I'm here to talk about being empowered in your life as a result of your decision to get sober or get recovered. So for those of you who alcohol isn't a thing, plug in your thing. Because at the end of the day, the most beautiful definition that I have found from my many teachers, from Gabor Mate to Tommy Rosen, is this simple phrase. Addiction is any manifestation in our life of any kind of behavior or thought process that causes pain and brings us bad consequences, and that we want to stop, but we can't. And it's so simple. When you think about it like that, I literally just want to cry how simple it is, because for so long, when I started to struggle in my own journey with sobriety and the word addiction or even alcoholism came up, I just flat out shut down. And I couldn't see that what they were saying was a reflection of my own life, because my perception of addiction was so stigmatized. I thought addiction really was the representation of a person who had chosen to give up on themselves, who had chosen to give up on their life, who was either drinking or using drugs or whatever, because they just didn't have willpower or strength, and they chose to live under the bridge. And so I love beginning here, because in 2009, when I myself was trapped in a cycle that some days looked like a whisper, some days it was pretty manageable, but most of the time, when I started to drink, I couldn't moderate or stop. Most of the time, I was actively trying to control and losing control. Most of the time, I could not say, I'm not going to drink and hold my word for more than a couple of days, if that. And so addiction really is important to understand from the very beginning. When I walked into the rooms of 12-step meetings, I thought I didn't belong there, even though this idea of me wanting to drink moderately or quit altogether was constantly being turned on its axis. So I walk into my first meeting, AA, in 2009, the night before I have driven my son drunk, fun. This is the compassion, because no matter how many times I tell the story, it still hits me like a punch. But like I said, I've learned to love on myself and understand that I wasn't acting as a terrible mother. I was acting as a person with addiction. I belong to a community of women called She Recovers, and the founder, one of the co-founders of that community, Dawn Nickel, uses one of my favorite phrases: the shit you did is the shit you did, not who you are. So I didn't know that at the time. I drive my son drunk. By the grace of God, nothing happened. But clearly something happened internally. The next day, I took myself to my first 12-step meeting to understand what the hell was wrong with me. And why was I doing something that was so abhorrent to me? I was in total shame, devastation, self-hatred, you name it. And when I learned in the rooms of AA that I was suffering from a condition that apparently everyone there had, of my mind, because my mind couldn't keep me away from that first drink, my mind would whisper in my own voice that it was a good idea to have one, and that this time it would be different, and that today I deserved it, and that I would start on Monday, and that I wasn't that bad. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Does anyone have that little voice, like in their own voice, that makes you feel like you've done so good, you deserve it? This time it's not going to be the same. Oh, for Christ's sake, of course, you'll be fine. Or you'll, yeah. I know you all can relate. Yeah. So every time, yes, and exactly. And so then what would happen is I would give myself permission. Then the next day, of course, wreckage, right? Because even if nothing had happened, because by the way, I was a single mom and I was working and I was fairly functional in my life. I paid bills. I want to say I raised a magnificent human, at the same time, but I was working so very hard on fighting myself. Either I was fighting my own head with the, I will drink, I'll not drink. Okay, well, this time I'll drink. Okay, so I'm just gonna have beer, not the wine. No, I'm not gonna have the tequila. It was like this buzz. It was so draining. So much time and so much effort fighting my own self without recognizing that what was happening is that my mind had a process of addiction happening. And that when my mind gave me permission in my voice to change my mind, which I wasn't changing my mind, I was just like a victim to have you guys ever heard of like these zombie ants? there's like some sort of fungi that gets in the operating system of the ants and they become like zombies. It's a real thing. It's almost like that. Like addiction centers in your mind and tells you that one drink is not going to damage you. That one, whatever, right? Fit in your thing. One donut, one, whatever it is, the thing that makes you disconnect yourself from the power of who you are and your life. And then once I gave myself permission, then the body reacts. In 12-step world, we talk about it as an allergy, which is really something that helped me understand this craving. Hi, Eric. This craving that I felt once I began drinking, once my mind gave me permission for that first drink, then my body would set up in motion this allergy, which is really nothing but an abnormal reaction that is present in a few of us and not in everyone. Just like when you eat a strawberry or a shrimp or whatever, and peanuts, and you have an allergy, you can't control it. Same. And not everyone has it, but some of us do. And so I'm giving a brief context of addiction because it is the suffering of not understanding that very simple concept: mind, body, powerlessness over how I react in my relationship, both mentally and physically and spiritually, because then the shame takes over our spirit. In the relationship to alcohol, that was the biggest hiccup that kept me in shame. Something must be wrong with me. It must be me. I am a failure. I'm a fuck up. I'm a bad mom. That's what I said to myself. In smallness, because there's no power there, right? And then in like not going to get the help that I needed because the shame and the smallness, the ignorance, all of it. So I begin my story giving that context always, whether you've heard it or not, because I want to set the stage for how devastated I was when I walked into the rooms of AA and I asked for help, thinking still that I wasn't like them and that I didn't belong there, but I just didn't know what else to do. So all of a sudden I started to get, information, inspiration, and more importantly, in community. So people that got me, people that all of a sudden were a lot more like me than I wanted to admit. And then when I did admit it, and when I did all of a sudden like put my gloves down, right, Melissa? Melissa's one of my personal friends and clients. We talked about putting down the gloves, those gloves that we have been fighting ourselves with in the world. And she put that, we put down the gloves, and that's where we get that moment of, and while it's devastating to realize that certainly that was true for me, I'm never going to be able to safely use that substance again, drug, alcohol, sugar, whatever it is that I would lose myself in safely or normally. There's also a piece of hope that lands because all of a sudden I'm like, damn, if all of these people, the dancing people, the smiling people, the living people, not the surviving people, the living people, if all of them were like me at some point, could I possibly contemplate that I could be like them? Joyous, happy, and free. Damn. So I very quickly, because my gloves were down, my mind was open, and my body was so devastated by my own cycle of back and forth, it all of a sudden made sense. And for the first time in my life, you don't understand the allergy thing at AA. I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end, Dana. Thank you for that. And remind me when I have Q&A to go back to it. It basically just is I react abnormally when I begin drinking. I'll dive more into it at the end. But when I start drinking, I develop something called a craving. That's like a feeling that I know many of you may relate. I begin drinking a little bit, and I feel so very good that my mind says, you know what? If one is good, two is going to be better. And then you'll stop. Like you see, there's now this craving for more. And I start drinking a little bit more. And then when I'm there, I'm like, 3 is not going to kill me. I mean, fuck it. Come on. And like, I don't have meetings at 7 in the morning. And then I go for the third thinking I'm changing my mind. But the truth is I am just reacting to the abnormal reaction in my body. And the worst thing is the more I drink, the less that switch that the normal drinkers around me had. Like I had girlfriends that, would do the same, 1, 2, 3. And then at 3, they'd be like, no, my kids need me at 7 in the morning. They would like flip the switch. And with the allergy, I didn't have access to that switch. And so that's kind of like that piece. I'll be happy to talk more about it at the end, but that's, mind, body. I walk into AA, love them, found a sponsor, realized I was here. There was a mountain that I needed to cross and I couldn't do it alone. On this side was a thing they called recovery and was a thing called sobriety. And I knew that mountain had 12 steps and that if I got through it, and apparently I needed a Sherpa, which was a sponsor, and apparently I needed people cheering me on, which was the fellowship, the people in the meeting. And so I decided, like I said, my gloves were down and I didn't know what else to do. And so I decided to do it. The good news is that decision to do the work, see, like pay attention to what I said. I didn't say the decision to quit drinking. I couldn't access that. I decided to do the work. I decided to put the gloves down. I decided to get a Sherpa. I decided to gear up for the travel of that mountain. I decided to stop listening to my best ideas and just freaking do the work. And that was the best decision of my life. That was in 2009, and within, I want to say 3 months, I'd done all of that beautiful travel, holding the hand of my Sherpa, my sponsor, and relying purely on the beautiful body of work of the 12 steps. So now I've gotten to the other side. And here's what that looked like. And the story is, believe it or not, it is a story, because this is the first part that I'm going to tell you about a story that has a plot twist. So in that sobriety, I wasn't drinking. In that sobriety, I was working a program and I was very active in it. In that sobriety, I was getting gold stars because I'm a good girl. And I was getting check marks by my fellowship, my friends in the program, and my sponsor. And at some point, I realized later, but I know now, I was really chasing the high of being a good girl and getting the gold star. In other words, this sobriety was good for me because I wasn't drinking. With that came obviously a lot of beautiful effects in my life. I didn't have the hangovers, didn't have the shame, I didn't have the, physical malaise. I was present for my kid, mostly. Here's the problem. For those 5 years that I was sober, I was mostly focused on not drinking. And I want to let this sink in because here comes the other ways that I felt. But I want you to kind of take a minute and ask yourself, is where I am only focused on not doing the thing, whatever your thing is? Because I gotta tell you, it felt good, but there was something so radically empty in my life. How that sobriety for me felt was abstinence-based, small, little secretive, never empowered. I don't know how to describe it, but it felt like I wasn't drinking, but I also wasn't living fully. I couldn't discern this, and because it was better than when I was, I thought I was great. But the truth is, I would walk into parties and still feel like, damn it, why can't I drink like them? I don't think you would have seen this, but I still felt like my shoulders were hunched down when it came to my feeling regarding my not drinking, because at the core of it, a part of me still believed that sobriety was punishment, that I was being punished, that kind of fear of missing out, by my bad actions with my drinking. And whether I was able to put this in words or not, it was a ideology, a feeling that, if you can recognize, those of you who are familiar with the feeling of shame, was still wrapped in shame. So sober as hell, stone cold sober, I was still detached, arguing with myself, a little angry and resentful at the world, or a lot angry and resentful at the world, and certainly shamed about who I was and why I had gotten myself there. And while I couldn't recognize it at the time, I gotta tell you, that kind of sobriety fucking sucked. I was not happy. Furthermore, I put down the wine and I picked up the real deal underneath my drinking, my codependency, my inability to take responsibility for a lot of my side and to own my life powerfully. I couldn't do that. I was now relying on whatever person I was either dating or working for, or a family member or a friend, and I was putting every single piece of who I was in their hands. And just in the same way that I was looking at the drink bringing me joy, I was now seeking outside of myself in a relationship to bring me joy, to bring me a sense of who I was, to validate my being a good girl, or to validate my being loved, or to validate something. In other words, I'd taken my power and taken it away from the drink, but I had kind of said, all right, well, I don't know what to do with this, and I'm sober, and I don't know. And I just put it in somebody else's hand, whoever that was. And I think that was fertile ground for a lot of the shit that then came up. You know, anxiety, panic attacks, an inability to even understand and recognize trauma. Big story there. I was kidnapped in Mexico when I was 20. I'm not going to go there because that's a whole other story, but you know, I talk about it in my podcast, talk about it in my course. So it was a huge trauma. Never had thought that that was going to start, you know, rising up. Because here's the truth. If we get sober or recover from any kind of toxic cycle, and all we are taking is the substance that ultimately was our solution. And I would never villainize alcohol, because it really was and served a purpose in my life. It was my best friend. It allowed me to survive. But if I take the substance and just focus on this first part, this layer that for a lot of us is kind of better, but not great, and I don't actually deal with all the crap underneath, then I got all the crap underneath in sobriety. That is the biggest get that I'm so passionate about bringing into your world these days, because that is not enough. That is a horrible kind of existence, period. What does this mean? Yeah, so destructible. Hi, Jules. What does this mean? Well, it means that I relapsed. It means that at 5 years sober, because of my codependency, I ended up in a relationship that served a purpose, loved the dude, was great for what it was at the time. It was also toxic as hell, and I couldn't recognize it. And it was toxic as hell, not for any other reason than how I related to my own self and to the relationship and to the world through it. And all of a sudden, I find myself drinking. I find myself drinking in a moment where I didn't even think about it. It was like, oh, that's a good idea. Look, Chardonnay. Surely it won't do anything. And the monster arrived in a very, very loud roar. You would think that with all the knowledge I had of the program, of speaking in podiums all over Dallas, I would have had the ability to very quickly get back on track. And it took me 2 years of revisiting the addiction. 2 years, Guys, that's 700 fucking days. And every day I wanted to quit. Every day I thought today's going to be the last time. And every day I couldn't, and I couldn't recognize why. And it's so simple and it's so beautiful. And I know that a lot of you guys carry this, which is why I really, really want you to pay attention to my next word. Shame. 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 Shame kept me there. This idea that I'd done something bad. This idea, shame. Shame is the most useless feeling. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. She said something, I actually wrote it. Yeah, shame is a waste of our time, like literally. It is a waste of our time because shame tells us that we are failures. Brene Brown, one of my adored mentors, I'm sure you guys are familiar with her, gives a very simple difference between guilt and shame because they're similar feelings, but they're so widely different. Guilt is the idea that what I have done was not great. That what I had done was amiss, it didn't work, it was a failure, whatever, and you recognize it, you look at the action being not supportive of whatever your growth, who you are, your values. You feel guilt because you did something that was bad. I don't believe in bad and good and right and wrong. I believe in truth, but still, it helps in this context. My actions were bad. Shame is about the identity of me being the bad one. That who I am is bad. That who I am is a failure. Not that the thing that I did was bad or that the thing or the action that I took was a failure, but that I am a failure. I get so gutted and so separated from my own self and from any vision of anything. And shame for me, and I don't know how it lands for you, but shame for me basically felt like victimhood. And so whether I could put it in words or not, the feeling in my body was, I fucked up. I am a fuck up. I am unable to do this. I am hopeless. I am never going to get this. Because especially I had like the inside, right? I'd experienced the other side. So shame was like, And so now all of a sudden I've lost sobriety. I can't get back on track. I have the shame and I have this narrative in my head of victimhood. And victimhood, again, I feel like they're best friends, they're cousins, they go and drink tequila together, shame and victimhood. Victimhood always allowed me, or it was the best friend of shame, because victimhood was the little voice in my head that said, well, if you had my life, you would drink too. If you'd gone through the shit, you'd do it. And the truth is, look, trauma happens. I'm not here to minimize. In fact, I'm here to honor that each one of you has something, some pain point, whether you do identify it as trauma or not. That is very real. And it is not your fault. And unfortunately, is part of us, a lot of us that use alcohol or any other substance to escape that pain. For me, again, it was a kidnapping. What a violation of my basic human rights. I honor whatever it is that you have gone through, loss, sexual abuse, death, parents that didn't know how to parent you. I don't know, and I honor, and I am in no way, shape, or form minimizing the importance of looking at that trauma and honoring the weight of it, and also saying, I'm so sorry if it happened in your life, and it requires some healing, some deep healing. And also knowing that, I also know that my best way to empower myself to start healing that trauma properly with compassion and ownership is to allow myself to drop out of my victimhood. This constant narrative that I had in sobriety and then in my relapse, that there was something that was beyond my grasp that I couldn't get to, that wasn't available for me to do, that would always keep me in that place of powerlessness. I went back to basics. I decided that sobriety was never going to feel like that again. This is the turning point, because if you hear and if you can feel it in your body, this is when I decided to drop my shame. I didn't know if I was allowed to, but I decided I was going to fucking give myself permission. I decided to drop the victimhood. I decided to stop being the lead in the telenovela, the soap opera of my life. I decided to grab that pen from all of the crazy villains and writers to whom I have handed the pen without realizing. And in little bits, I started building my path back to a sobriety that wasn't based on me drinking or drinking. Perk up your ears. I wasn't so focused on the drinking. I started focusing on fighting for my life. I started focusing on doing things differently and giving myself permission to drop all the crap that was stopping me from getting to a new way of living. That's going to mean separate things for different people. This is what it looked like for me. Yeah, mentality. The mind shift, that breath of giving myself permission, dropping shit that wasn't working for me, recognizing what I was doing wasn't working. What I was doing here wasn't working. What I was doing here wasn't working. My mind, my body, what I was doing here wasn't working. And then I'm left with a terrifying and also exciting white canvas. What the fuck am I going to do now? And that's where, again, I knew I needed to, of course, address the alcohol piece, but the mind shift was more about, I'm going to start fighting for my life instead of fighting against my drinking. I talked about it in the last meeting. I talk about this with my clients from the very beginning. There is such a huge shift that happens for each of us. So this is a little bit of homework for you guys if you personally haven't experienced or thought about this. This question, am I fighting against my addiction? That really is what encompasses the first 5 years of my sobriety, if you remember. I was just focused on fighting my addiction. Versus, am I fighting for me? For my transformation, for my evolution, for my life. I call it my revolución, my revolution, my recovery evolution. What was in my toolkit? How did I start to bring this into life? I went back to my 12 steps. Huge fan. The actual methodology of 12 steps that get me reconnected to something bigger than myself, that allows for me to access something I can't access by myself. And also, I was seeking a mentor that understood relapse. I was seeking a mentor that wasn't going to bring me shame, because I'd made a decision I wasn't going to take shame, either for myself or from others. I wasn't going to give it to me. I wasn't going to accept it from the world. Fuck shame. Whether you love that phrase, you hate it, we have to take a very, very, very big stand against it. Yes, fuck shame. Glad you love it. So I went back to the 12 steps, and here is the juju. And this is where, whether you jive with the 12 steps or not, that is 1000% up to you. This is where I just say, be willing to contemplate that deprogramming, in my case of alcohol, needed a radical new program to come and reset my operational system. We're all big, exotic, beautiful, exquisite computers. I was overtaken by a computer virus. I needed a new program to come and wipe slate clean, whether that's 12-step, whether that is, refuge recovery, whether that is SMART, whether that is Women for Sobriety. Honestly, as a coach, I embrace and I'm curious and excited to experiment, but I do understand that if someone is deeply in addiction, there is nothing more effective than a rewiring through a new set of instructions, through a guide, a Sherpa, a mentor, a sponsor, a coach, and a community. That is what all of these programs that I just described have in common. But here's where I get juicy. Then I realized that all the crap that I hadn't dealt with before needed to be dealt now with. Now? One of those. My English. You get it. So now all of a sudden I'm like, all right, so what is this codependency thing? Like, it was this weird amorphous concept, right? But all of a sudden I empowered myself, because remember, when you drop victimhood, you give yourself permission and now you're empowered. This is when I decided to join and seek communities beyond the rooms of AA. Get new ideas, get new mentors, start reading, and to make it, I guess, a framework that can be easier to understand, which is a methodology that I use with every single one of my clients. It's this idea of, what am I putting in my mind, where normally all that shitty noise was taking place. Pattern interruption, right? So my program was my foundation, and then I addressed the mind piece separately. What am I learning about codependency? What am I learning about trauma? Can I bring in coaching? I invested in a coach, saved my life. Didn't think I could afford her, could not have made a better decision. Just so beautiful what it feels like to have ownership of your own mind space. And I also know it doesn't take forever, because I see it in my client's life happen very quickly, because it's the dropping of shame and the dropping of victimhood that is so radical. So the mind, amazing, Sarah, 3 months sober. Then my body, God, last night, my beautiful Kate, who was here, said something so brilliant. She was stuck in her head. She was stuck in all the shit. There are moments that I have to go back to basics. Getting out of my mind and my spirit through the pattern interruption of getting in my body. I never understood how my body was the missing link for me to interrupt the insanity, and I say that lovingly, the insanity of my addiction. So now I have my program, my mind, my body, and then the spirit. I say then, even though this is like at the core of the juju that changes everything. It's like, what are my spiritual practices? Meditation. Sarah Blondin, she saved my ass so many times. I would come back here and just put her in my ears. God, start my day with her. Start my day with another favorite teacher, Tara Brock. So many wonderful, wonderful people that elevated my spirit. And then, of course, making that mine. Journaling, prayer, meditation, two-way prayer. I mean, so many beautiful things. So I would love to talk in more detail about that, but I just glanced at the clock and holy shit, I've been talking for 49 minutes. But it is so exciting. I hope that you guys can understand how very different this new stage of my sobriety was. I don't even call it sobriety. Sobriety still feels like a silent, small kind of thing. I mean, I do say sobriety but I always say, God, it's this badass, exciting, empowering, delicious, juicy, sexy. That's why I called my platform my Badass Recovery. I don't feel like a badass every day, by the way. But here's the truth. No matter how low my little flame is, I have all the toolkit available and the mindset and the self-trust to know that at the core, how I get to show to my life and embrace my sobriety and embrace The broken pieces, the beautiful pieces, the hiccups, the anxieties, the joys, all the shit, it's all mine. All mine. And none of it is not welcome. Every single bit of it is mine. And that feeling of empowerment actually makes me feel like a badass. And it can for you too. That is why that's there. It's not for me, it's to invite you to look at your life. I don't count days. I count the beats of my heart. Coin that phrase. Okay, so I am going to be silent now, grateful now. I'm going to open up the floor for questions.
Hey, I'm back. I know, I never left, but I said I was going to shut up, and I lied. I'm not shutting up, obviously. Listen, I shared that masterclass in particular with you because I used to have a really stuffy presentation with PowerPoint and things, graphics that talked about addiction and how it worked on the body and how to begin. And the truth is, nothing works best than sharing from the heart. And that class that I shared with you was a beautiful live engagement with the Insight Timer community. If you are familiar with Insight Timer, it is a beautiful app, as you know. If you aren't, it is the world's largest meditation app, and I am honored to have been a teacher on it since 2018, I think. But now what? I gave you my story. I gave you a vision of the kind of sobriety that I really don't want you to have. I gave you a vision of what it is that I did and the kind of really empowered, on fire, transformational sobriety that I do want you to have. And at the end of the day, that's where the juju is. What are you going to do at this point in time to access that sobriety? Because you've heard me say this before, inspiration, fabulous. It gets us excited. It gives us hope. Fantastic. Information, it gets us clear. Information regarding the clarity of how basic addiction is, how it centers in the mind, and therefore none of those programs out there that give you the information and the statistics and the reasons why you should stop, they're not ever going to work for you. Because if you are like me and this thing is in your mind, then you can't use your mind to do that change that you desperately want. And so now here you are at the end of this class. I gave you that, the inspiration and the information. Down, check, great. And what do you do now? That's the question. And I have answers. Now, these answers are not for everyone. They are for the person that is really ready to change their life. Now, notice that I didn't say really ready to quit drinking, because a lot of us will never get there. Even if we have a tiny little window of time when our soul or our body, because we're hungover, or our mind even says, yeah, I really need to stop drinking. That little window of time will evaporate so very quickly. And so we never really feel ready to quit drinking. So listen up. I didn't say if you're ready to quit drinking. And if you are, fantastic, you're in that window of time. But what I'm saying is, if you're really ready to stop doing what you're doing, to start changing your life, that is the person that needs to perk up their ears. And if you're here and if you're still listening to this, I believe that this is you. So if you are ready to stop feeling like shit every morning or every weekend, that shame of what did I do? What did I say? What did I bring into my loved ones' world? Your children, your partner, your friends, your coworkers, your parents, and just your loved ones. And beyond how it shows in other people's lives, how do you want to feel about you? What are you ready to do with your life, with your health, with your vibrancy, with your energy, with your soul, with your creativity, with your joy of life? Where is it? Are you ready to stop just surviving? And I'm getting really preachy here. And it's like, you know, Pamela on the soapbox. But I'm truly passionate because for so long, I didn't know that there was another way. And so I am here to invite you to leverage my 15 years of journey. I am here to say, let my past help you. Let my pain be what transforms yours so very quickly. I am here to invite you to change everything by saying yes to you. And I'm so passionate because my biggest mission these days is to help people like you change their life, and not by just giving information and inspiration, but by giving you a path of action. And I have two ways of doing that for you and with you. One is through a fabulous series. And when I say fabulous, I really do mean fabulous, because it is comprised of 3 online courses that will get you from the place where you're at, hopeless and unclear and full of shame and just not knowing how to get out, to a place of clarity, of hope. That series is comprised of 3 courses. A video course that will teach you the ABCs of sobriety. It is the perfect framework. It is called Sobriety One-on-One. 10 modules that will give you everything that you need to get started. A complimentary, beautiful course. It's an audio coaching 30-day course. It is a reframe of everything that you think you know about early sobriety. So basically, it's your secret hidden back pocket weapon so that you can learn very quickly and deeply to grow your sea legs in sobriety as you begin the journey. And then the 3rd course is an audio course that will help you crush the craving, navigate that insane wave that normally gets you back on your knees. I don't want that to happen. Now, the next offer is the big one. This is not for the weak of heart. This is not for the person who's full of excuses. This is not for the person that is still willing to get in their own way. This is for the person that really, really is ready to say, fuck it, I can't continue living like this. And that is my mentorship. My mentorship, I say it confidently, and I say it because I know that perhaps right now it's very hard for you to trust yourself. I can tell you that you can trust that I know how to guide you from wherever it is that you are on your journey, because mentorship, the beauty of it is, it's a personalized approach that meets you wherever it is that you are. Whether you've tried sobriety attempts 1,000 times, or whether this is new for you, or whether you are still drinking and not sure how to give that up, or if you're just sober curious, or perhaps you're already sober, but shit, there's this thing that still is heavy on your chest, this anxiety, perhaps codependency, perhaps trauma, perhaps just a sense that sobriety is just small and shamey and not great. My hand is there to guide you through it all. I have beautiful options for different time frames, for different timelines, depending where you're at. We have guidance and mentorship packages for 8 weeks or for 13 weeks. And I have, of course, different ways of beginning this. So it doesn't matter at this point in time, frankly, if I give you more details, because by this point, you know if you want to start taking next steps. You also know that my job is not to convince you. I'm not here to convince anyone sober. I'm not here to inspire anyone sober or inform anyone sober. I am here to invite you to take a path of action. I am here to invite you to say yes to you, to take a breath and drop whatever resistance you may be feeling now. It is normal. As you will learn in both my courses and my guidance and mentorship, part of what happens for us is that the way that our mind operates is that we kind of want it, but we're there to also put our foot so that we fall down and have the same fall over and over and over again. And that is the problem, that until you don't learn to recognize that, you're going to continue getting in your way. And listen, you're not getting any younger. And I'm not saying that to be an asshole. I'm 49 years old and very aware of age at this point in my life, okay? You're not getting any healthier if you don't change this. it's not going to get any better. If you don't do something radically different, it's not going to get anything better. If you don't actually take a risk and leap and trust, not just me, and you can trust me because I know how to do this. I am so honored to even sound arrogant, so bear with me for a minute. I know that of all of the people that I have helped throughout the last few years, and there's like, several hundreds that I have hand on hand led through this, 95% not just get sober within the first 3 weeks of mentorship, but they actually start falling in love with the person that gets unveiled. They start to truly come home to themselves. Sobriety has nothing to do for me with the not drinking. The not drinking needs to happen so that you get yourself out of the way and start spreading your wings and realizing how beautiful life can be if you become the person that is already in there, covered and marinated in whatever the substance it is that of your choice. And we have to unveil that. That person is dying to come out and is right now still like ears perked going, okay, that's great, but what does that mean? And how much is it going to cost me? And that's the deal. It requires bravery. There's going to be fear. You've heard me say it before. Fear and bravery are part of the same coin, and one does not exist without the other. But this is a kind of decision, and I even laugh before I say it because, roll of eyes. Everyone says that about whatever the thing that they're, hustling and pitching out. Oh, this will change your life. But man, if anything is going to change your life is getting sober, and not just getting sober. I did that for 5 years. The kind of sobriety that I had, as you already heard, did not feel good, did not help me be in a place of thriving. The kind of sobriety that I am offering, the kind of sobriety that I know I can get you to, is the kind that truly changes not just your life, but your loved one's life, your children's lives, and even for generations to come. Your children will not have the trauma of having grown with a parent that wasn't present. Your partner will not have the experience of a partner that was not present. And you get to live one life. One. We don't get a do-over. And you know deep down that it is time. So I invite you to click on the links below. There's going to be one for the course series and one for the mentorship. And I ask that in that page, you take the next step, that you purchase the series. And if you are ready for the big guns, which I hope you are, and I can only take a limited amount of people at a time, so I really urge you to do the thing. Get on a clarity call with me. If you are serious about this, I will get on the phone with you and we will talk through all of your questions. We will talk through all of what can be possible for you. It takes 3 seconds of bravery. I ask that you do it. I ask that you count like 1, 2, 3, go, and just freaking do the thing because you have the one life. All right. That's all. I hope to see you